Okay, let's unpack this. Everyone seems to be buzzing about intermittent fasting, asking, is it truly effective or just another fleeting diet trend? You're probably wondering the same thing.
Yeah, it's everywhere, isn't it?
Well, we've taken a deep dive into some compelling findings, specifically 25 years of research from Johns Hopkins. And what scientists discovered after studying thousands of people, particularly with the 16.8 method, it kind of changes everything we thought we knew about when we eat versus what we eat.
What's truly remarkable here, I think, is that the results extend far beyond just dropping pounds.
Right.
So this deep dive, it aims to give you a clear, science-backed understanding of how it works, maybe why it might be beneficial, what the challenges are, and maybe most importantly, how you might approach it sustainably.
So what does this all actually mean for you listening? Our mission is to distill the core insights, including some surprising facts and even a recent controversy, just to help you feel truly well-informed about this whole topic.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so most people assume intermittent fasting is simply about eating less, right? But Johns Hopkins researcher Mark Madsen discovered a completely different process at play inside the body. After decades studying brain health and metabolism, he found the real magic isn't just cutting calories, but something called metabolic switching.
Right, metabolic switching. It's a fundamental shift, really, in how your body processes energy down at the cellular level.
Okay.
It's what happens when you stop eating for, say, 16 hours straight. Instead of just waiting around for the next meal, the body actually activates an entirely different energy system.
And most people never experience this because we eat so often.
Pretty much. We consume food every few hours throughout the day, so that switch rarely gets flipped for most of us.
So when does this switch actually flip then? How does it work?
Well, within the first 12 hours or so of fasting, your liver burns through its stored sugar reserves. That's called glycogen. Once those sugar stores are depleted, something pretty remarkable happens. Your body switches gears and starts breaking down fat cells to create molecules called ketones for fuel.
Ketones, okay, I've heard of those.
Exactly. And this fat burning process, it truly kicks into high gear between hours 12 and 16 of fasting.
So that 16-hour mark is kind of key.
It seems to be. The liver converts fatty acids into these ketones, which then power your brain, your heart, your muscles. And unlike glucose from food, ketones provide this steady, sustained energy. You don't get those familiar crashes and cravings you might associate with constant eating.
That makes a lot of sense from an evolutionary perspective, doesn't it? Humans developed this metabolic flexibility over millions of years.
Absolutely. Our ancestors, they regularly went 16, maybe 20 hours between successful hunts or finding food. Their bodies just became incredibly efficient at switching between burning sugar and burning fat based on whatever was available.
It's quite a thought, isn't it? That modern humans eat so frequently that most of us never really activate this fat-burning state our bodies were actually designed to use.
It really is. And this brings us to a crucial point about insulin sensitivity.
Ah, yes. Insulin.
The research from Johns Hopkins clearly shows metabolic switching improves insulin sensitivity way beyond what simple calorie restriction achieves.
How so?
Well, when you fast for 16 hours, your insulin levels drop quite significantly. That drop signals your body to release stored fat. And it also improves how efficiently your cells respond to insulin when you do eat.
Okay.
This just creates much better blood sugar control compared to, say, spreading the same number of calories across lots of meals throughout the day.
So, if I'm understanding this correctly, traditional dieting, even with healthy snacks, keeps insulin levels kind of constantly elevated.
Often, yes. Your body just stays in that sugar-burning mode and rarely gets a chance to access stored fat for energy.
Which explains why two people can eat the same number of calories, but see totally different results depending on when they eat them. It really is about the timing.
Precisely. It's not just the calories. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the timing component also aligns really well with your metabolism's natural circadian rhythms.
Our body clocks.
Exactly. The body produces different hormones at specific times of day. For instance, growth hormone, which helps preserve muscle and burn fat, actually increases during fasting periods. And cortisol levels, they naturally rise in the morning to help you tap into stored energy. Constant eating can kind of disrupt these natural hormone patterns, making your body less efficient overall.
So have studies actually compared this head-to-head?
Yeah.
Like intermittent fasting versus just cutting calories?
Yes, they have. And they found that people practicing time-restricted eating showed greater improvements in insulin sensitivity, even when both groups lost similar amounts of weight.
Wow, so same weight loss, but better metabolic health.
That's what the findings suggest. The intermittent fasting group also tended to maintain more muscle mass and had better markers for overall metabolic health.
That's huge. Muscle mass is so important.
It is, and these metabolic changes happening inside your body during that 16-hour fasting window. They actually extend far beyond just that period. Your cells become more efficient at using both glucose and fat for fuel. Your liver gets better at regulating blood sugar. Your muscles become more sensitive to insulin. These adaptations happen specifically because of that metabolic switching process, not just from eating fewer calories overall.
Okay, understanding this metabolic switching mechanism is, well, it's key because it reveals why different intermittent fasting approaches might work better for different people, different lifestyles.
Right. Think about someone like Sarah in the case study. She tried 3 approaches, only one really clicked. It wasn't about willpower. It was about finding a method that actually fit her life.
Makes sense. So what are the main approaches people try?
Generally, they fall into maybe 3 main categories. There's time-restricted eating, like the 16.8 we've been discussing.
Right.
Then there's alternate day fasting and also periodic fasting, like the 5.2 method.
Can you break those down a bit?
Sure. Time-restricted eating just compresses your daily eating into a specific window, like 8 hours. Alternate day fasting involves cycling between normal eating days and days with very low calories, or sometimes complete fasting.
Okay, and 5.2?
The 5.2 method means you restrict calories pretty significantly, maybe 500 for women, 600 for men on 2 non-consecutive days each week, and then eat normally the other 5 days.
It seems like there are quite a few options. You hear about people failing pretty quickly sometimes.
That happens a lot. Many people choose the wrong method for their lifestyle, maybe picking what sounds easiest on paper, or maybe the most extreme, rather than what truly fits their work schedule, family life, social commitments.
That mismatch just creates unnecessary stress, doesn't it? Makes it hard to stick with.
Absolutely. It makes adherence almost impossible long-term. Take the 16.8 method, for example. It involves eating within an 8-hour window, fasting for 16 hours daily.
So like eating between noon and 8 p.m.
That's a really common pattern, yeah. It means skipping breakfast, finishing dinner reasonably early. The appeal is its flexibility. No specific foods are technically off limits during the eating window, though quality matters, of course. And it aligns pretty well with those natural circadian rhythms we talked about.
Right, because our metabolism naturally slows down a couple of hours before bed anyway, so eating late isn't ideal.
Exactly. An 8 p.m. cutoff supports better sleep quality and metabolic function. Plus, fasting in the morning coincides with those higher cortisol levels, which can actually help you access stored energy more efficiently.
But what about other lifestyles? Shift workers, for instance.
Good point. Alternate day fasting and 5.2 offer different kinds of flexibility. Lifestyle factors really are the main determinant. Shift workers might struggle with a consistent noon to 8 window, but they could adapt 16.8 to their schedule, maybe eating from 4 p.m. to midnight, for example.
And parents, or people with busy social lives.
Right. Parents with young kids might find alternate day fasting tricky with family meals. Business professionals constantly doing lunch meetings might find the 5.2 method fits better because they can schedule their fasting days around commitments.
Weekends too. Social events, travel, those can throw a wrench in things.
For sure. The 16.8 method is often easier on weekends. You just eat within your window. Alternate day fasting requires more planning around social events. The 5.2 method probably offers the most flexibility there, letting you avoid fasting days during weekend plans or travel.
So the research backs this up, that adherence depends on the fit.
Yes, research examining real-world results consistently shows that adherence rates vary dramatically between methods, all based on individual circumstances. The IF approach that meshes best with your current life, that's the biggest predictor of long-term success more than anything else.
It's interesting because weight loss gets all the headlines, but you mentioned other benefits. The researchers found impacts on the heart, brain, blood sugar, things that surprised even them.
They did. Studies involving tens of thousands of people revealed health benefits extending far beyond just dropping pounds. It seems to affect nearly every major system in your body.
Like what specifically?
Well, these broader health benefits include significant improvements in cardiovascular function, brain performance, blood sugar regulation, and even inflammatory responses.
And these happen even without weight loss.
What's truly fascinating is that, yes, these changes often happen independently of weight loss. It suggests intermittent fasting triggers biological processes that just straightforward calorie restriction doesn't seem to activate in the same way.
Let's talk cardiovascular. What did the studies show there?
Improvements appeared pretty consistently across multiple studies. We're talking improvements in several key risk factors for heart disease, blood sugar levels, blood pressure, blood triglycerides, total cholesterol, and even LDL, the bad cholesterol.
So actual clinical trials showed this.
Yes, randomized clinical trials indicated decreases these markers through mechanisms beyond just weight reduction. Even participants who didn't lose significant weight saw some of these benefits.
What about blood sugar? You mentioned insulin sensitivity earlier.
Right. The blood sugar regulation benefits show particular promise, especially for type 2 diabetes prevention and management. Intermittent fasting seems to lead to major benefits for insulin resistance and can create significant reductions in blood sugar levels.
Is there specific data on that?
Yeah, a 2022 review looked at 10 studies on intermittent fasting. It concluded that fasting blood sugar was reduced by an average of 3 to 6% in people with obesity and diabetes. Anything that reduces insulin resistance should, in theory, help lower blood sugar and protect against type 2 diabetes development.
And brain health, that sounds intriguing.
It is. Research there reveals improved cognitive function and potential longevity benefits too. Fasting seems to increase the growth of new nerve cells, which could benefit brain function long term. It also boosts levels of a crucial brain hormone called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. Think of it like fertilizer for your brain cells, promotes growth resilience.
And low BDNS is linked to problems.
Exactly. BDNF deficiency might contribute to things like depression and other brain conditions. So boosting it is a significant potential neurological benefit, suggesting IF might affect brain aging and cognitive decline.
You also mentioned inflammation. How does IF affect that?
The anti-inflammatory effects seem to impact chronic disease risk through multiple pathways. Studies show intermittent fasting reduces oxidative damage, that's like cellular rust, and significantly lowers key markers of inflammation in the body.
Like C-reactive protein.
Yes, things like IL-6, TNF-alpha, C-reactive protein, interferon gamma. Research indicates it improves inflammatory status, particularly in obese subjects. When these markers go down, it suggests your body is under less chronic stress, better equipped to fend off aging and disease processes. It's potentially quite powerful for long-term health.
Now, okay, here's where you said it gets really interesting and maybe a bit controversial.
Right. There are some conflicting findings that definitely create both excitement and, well, some concern.
What are those?
A fairly recent analysis from 2024 looked at over 20,000 U.S. adults. It was presented at the American Heart Association's scientific sessions.
Okay.
It found that people who limited their eating to less than 8 hours per day were actually more likely to die from cardiovascular disease compared to people who ate across a more typical 12 to 16-hour window per day.
Whoa. That sounds completely counter to the benefits you just mentioned. How do we square that?
It's a really important question, and it caused quite a stir. Dr. Michelle O'Donoghue from Mass General Brigham commented on it. She said, essentially, the key takeaway is don't panic.
Don't panic. Okay.
She emphasized that this particular study isn't definitive. It shows an association, but it doesn't prove cause and effect. There could be other factors involved in that group eating in a very restricted window. However, she did add, nonetheless, it does raise some questions about the safety of intermittent fasting.
So it's a piece of the puzzle, but not the whole picture. It highlights the need for caution and maybe explains why some people don't see the benefits.
Exactly. While lots of research shows specific benefits, better cardiovascular markers, blood sugar control, brain function, reduced inflammation, this conflicting finding is a crucial reminder that the science is still evolving. It underscores why individual responses can vary and why, well, caution is always wise. More research is definitely needed.
It makes you realize that despite all the success stories you see, like flooding social media, the actual adherence rates tell a different story.
They really do.
Research shows that something like 73% of people who start intermittent fasting quit within the first month. That's a huge number.
It is, and interestingly, it's often not because they're just too hungry.
Really? What is it then?
It seems to be down to about 5 critical mistakes that kind of sabotage everything before people really see the results they're hoping for.
Okay, so what are these pitfalls? Hunger isn't the main one.
Most people assume hunger will be the biggest hurdle, but many successful long-term practitioners report that hunger actually becomes quite manageable, usually within the first couple of weeks as the body adapts.
So the real problems are?
They tend to emerge more from behavioral patterns and maybe unrealistic expectations. These can create these sort of failure cycles.
Like the overeating trap. I've heard of that.
That's probably the biggest one. It catches more people than any other mistake. What happens is individuals consume excessive calories or maybe just lots of unhealthy foods during their eating periods.
Trying to compensate for the fasting.
Exactly. They compensate for missed meals by eating larger portions or choosing really calorie-dense, often nutrient-poor foods. This completely negates the benefits of the fasting period.
Yeah.
It eliminates any caloric deficit and prevents those metabolic benefits like improved insulin sensitivity from really taking hold.
So the quality and quantity of food during the eating window is actually more critical than the fasting itself.
In many ways, yes. Success hinges on what you eat when you do eat, not just on enduring the fast.
What's another major pitfall?
Muscle loss. This is a serious risk that can derail long-term results.
How does it happen with fasting?
If you're not getting proper protein intake and, crucially, doing resistance training, you can lose muscle mass right along with fat.
That's bad because
Losing muscle slows down your metabolism. It makes maintaining any weight loss nearly impossible in the long run. So, preserving lean muscle mass requires combining intermittent fasting with strength training, but a lot of beginners, unfortunately, ignore the exercise part completely.
so they end up losing the wrong kind of weight, essentially.
Precisely. And it can create metabolic problems that actually make regaining weight even easier down the line.
Are there psychological challenges too?
Definitely. The initial adjustment period can be tough. It often brings hunger, irritability, maybe headaches, other side effects that might take several weeks to resolve as your body adapts.
Mood swings, energy crashes.
Yeah, many people experience those during the first month. And social situations can become genuinely stressful if your eating window doesn't line up with family meals or work events or going out with friends.
And expectation.
People often expect, immediate dramatic results. They see the hype online. When progress inevitably slows down, as it does with any sustainable approach, they get discouraged and quit.
Sounds like it's definitely not for everyone.
Yeah.
You mentioned medical considerations earlier. Who really should avoid this?
That's a critical point. Medical considerations make intermittent fasting potentially unsafe for certain groups. Individuals with any history of eating disorders face particular risks. The National Eating Disorders Association identifies fasting as a known potential trigger.
That's really important to highlight.
Absolutely. Also, those who are pregnant or breastfeeding have increased nutritional needs and shouldn't restrict like this. People with diabetes, especially type 1, need very careful medical supervision because of the effects on blood sugar.
Any other groups?
Yes, other vulnerable groups include the elderly, people under 18 whose bodies are still developing, anyone taking medications that absolutely must be taken with food, individuals with a low BMI, say under 18.5, and really anyone with significant emotional issues related to food.
So the bottom line is, consult a healthcare professional first.
Absolutely, especially for anyone in those categories. Don't just jump in based on something you read online.
Okay, so it sounds like avoiding these failures comes down to gradual implementation and building sustainable habits, right?
That seems to be the key. Starting maybe with a 12-hour eating window and then gradually reducing it over weeks gives the body time to adapt, both physically and mentally.
And fitting it into your existing life, not the other way around.
Exactly. Building the eating schedule around your existing routines rather than completely restructuring your entire daily life significantly improves adherence and makes it feel less like a burden.
So the 16.8 method, it's helped millions, but the real decider between it being a sustainable lifestyle or just another failed diet attempt seems to be viewing it as a permanent eating pattern, not some temporary fix.
That's a great way to put it. Michigan medicine dietitian Sue Rice-Camp explains that successful practitioners approach it by, quote, being mindful of what and when you eat, setting realistic limits, and establishing boundaries. It's about integration, not deprivation.
What really separates the long-term successes from the quitters?
Well, the key factors seem to be that gradual implementation we talked about, ensuring proper nutrition during the eating windows, and having realistic expectations about the results and the timeline.
So people who stick with it for years, they don't just dive into a 20-hour fast on day one.
Generally, no. They ease into it. And critically, they prioritize food quality. It's not just about cramming calories into the eating window, it's about getting nutrient-dense foods that support overall health and keep you satisfied.
Harvard Health mentions something similar, doesn't it? About the weight loss being mostly from just eating fewer calories overall.
Yes, they note that the weight loss achieved through time-restricted eating is primarily due to achieving a negative energy balance. Essentially, if you keep making reasonably healthy food choices but just limit your eating window, you'll likely consume a few hundred fewer calories per day naturally.
And if that's sustainable for you.
Exactly. If that pattern is sustainable as a lifestyle, it could add up to modest, steady weight loss over time.
What's the advice for beginners then? Start slow.
Definitely. Start maybe with a 12-hour eating window, then reduce it by perhaps 1 hour each week until you reach your target, like 16.8. Harvard Health research suggests it can take 2 to 4 weeks for your body to become accustomed to the new eating schedule.
And expect some bumps initially.
Yes, during that adjustment, feeling hungry or irritable is pretty normal. But, and this is important, if you experience unusual anxiety, nausea, persistent headaches, or any other really concerning symptoms, you need to stop the diet and talk to your doctor. Don't just push through severe symptoms.
And we keep coming back to this. What you eat during the feeding windows is crucial.
It really determines the optimal results, maybe even more than when you eat. WebMD recommends sticking to healthy foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lean protein, healthy fats, and limiting the treats like desserts, excess alcohol, highly processed foods.
Makes sense. You need to make those calories count nutritionally, especially in a shorter window.
Precisely. Ensure you're meeting your nutritional needs while still managing overall calorie intake.
How does exercise fit in? And work schedules, social life? We touched on this, but how do people make it work practically?
It requires some strategic planning. Michigan medicine research suggests that combining intermittent fasting with exercise, maybe particularly a plant-based diet, can lead to really promising results.
And strength training is key.
Yes, Harvard Health strongly advises pairing resistance training with any intermittent fasting protocol. That's crucial, as we discussed, to maintain that vital lean muscle mass while you're losing fat.
Okay, and the reminder about consulting a professional first.
It bears repeating. Always talk to a healthcare professional before starting, especially if you have any underlying health conditions. WebMD specifically advises that people with diabetes, a history of eating disorders, or those who are pregnant or breastfeeding should avoid IF unless they are under strict medical supervision. A doctor can assess your specific health status and give you personalized guidance.
What about timelines? People want results fast.
Managing expectations is key. Most people might see some initial weight loss, maybe water weight, within the first couple of weeks, but sustainable results, the real metabolic adaptations, develop over months, not days.
And staying hydrated during the fast.
Crucial. Drinking plenty of water and other calorie-free beverages like unsweetened tea or black coffee during fasting periods really helps manage hunger and keeps you feeling okay.
So wrapping this up, the 16.8 method and intermittent fasting in general, it works through this mechanism of metabolic switching, burning stored fat for energy. Millions maintain it successfully because it can adapt to various lifestyles without eliminating entire food groups.
That's the potential appeal. But making informed decisions based on the actual scientific evidence, including the potential downsides and controversies, rather than just social media testimonials, that's what really determines your success and safety.
So we've taken this deep dive into how intermittent fasting works, those biological mechanisms like metabolic switching and improving insulin sensitivity. And your success really seems to depend on choosing the right approach for your lifestyle and, critically, avoiding those common pitfalls like overeating during feeding windows or losing muscle mass because you're not getting enough protein or doing resistance exercise.
And that final crucial reminder again, before starting any new eating protocol, please always discuss your plans with a healthcare professional. This is just so important if you have underlying health conditions, if you take medications that need to be taken with food, or if you have any history of eating disorders. They can offer guidance tailored just for you.
Absolutely. It really is all about making evidence-based health decisions, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than just blindly following the latest trending diet culture that often promises quick fixes without considering long-term sustainability or individual medical need.
Exactly. And it leaves you with a thought, perhaps. What if true metabolic flexibility isn't just about when we eat, but maybe about rediscovering our body's sort of ancient wisdom in this modern world where food is constantly available?
Perhaps the real takeaway is that understanding your own body, making informed choices that you can actually sustain, is so much more powerful than just chasing the latest quick fix or trend. So maybe a final thought for you listening is this. Reflecting on everything we've discussed, what's perhaps one small, gradual change you could explore after, of course, talking with a health professional to maybe better align your eating patterns with your body's natural ancient rhythms? It's about personalized, evidence-based choices.
A great point to end on. Understanding yourself and working with your body, not against it. Thanks for breaking all that down.
My pleasure. It's a fascinating topic.